I had a purpose before everybody had an opinion.
The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out.
You want Philly?
Chase Utley, you are the man.
You come out backyard and you try to start something, you always get your butt kicked.
The prayers have been answered.
How about those Eagles, baby?
And Rio Muto can run for days.
Can you feel what's about to happen on this field, man?
A perfect game. Roy Halladay has thrown the second perfect game in Philadelphia Phillies history.
All right, we are back here with another episode of Philly Talk. Obviously here to talk about the Eagles free agency. Now, I wanted to wait a bit for when, first officially, all the free agents are officially signed. But also I wanted to wait so that, we weren't just constantly making these videos about every new free agent coming in, and, wanted to give a good amount of time so that most of the, free agents that they were going to sign would be signed. There might still be a couple more after this, who knows, but just wanted to give myself a good amount of time to see what would happen. But so first off, obviously the one thing to talk about is that we still have some free agents on the market, obviously ones that were formerly with us, like Zach Cunningham, like Sean Bradley, Shaq Leonard, Julio Jones, Zacchaeus, Quez Watkins, Rashad Penny, Bradley Roby, those guys who are still unrestricted free agents. The ones we lost were Nicholas Morrow went on to sign with the Bills. DeAndre Swift obviously agreed to a 2-year contract with the Bears. Mariota went to the Commanders. Kevin Byard went with the Bears. So, some, notable departures, but not ones that I think the team will miss too much. Obviously, the big one being DeAndre Swift. That was like the first big free agent news that hit when free agency started, or the legal tampering period started, and everyone was like, oh my gosh, how could the Eagles lose out on DeAndre Swift, and the news came out that they tried to offer him something before the legal tampering period started, but he wanted to test the market. He wanted to see what value he would get out there, and good for him, especially because I don't blame him for wanting to see what is out there with the way the team kind of utilized them last year. I mean, we saw how much we were complaining last year about them not running the ball enough with him. So it wasn't surprising to see him at least want to test that market. But the Eagles said, okay, well, you can go test that market. We're going to go look at other options. And of course, the big option was Saquon Barkley of the Giants. They gave him a 3-year contract where it has potential to be really good for him if, with all these different incentives. But of course, it's, still somewhat team friendly, and it's also, based upon health. Is Saquon going to be able to stay healthy? That is the biggest question mark when it comes to this signing. Is he going to stay healthy? Is he still going to be the Saquon that we know? It's the same thing with Derrick Henry signing with the Ravens, where it's like he's got a lot of mileage on him as a running back. Is it gonna remain the same? That's the thing we've noticed with a lot of running backs, is because the teams like to run them into the ground and don't want to pay him this and that. It's always a big concern. The Packers just signed Josh Jacobs, cutting Aaron Jones, and I think Aaron Jones went to the Vikings afterwards. I know Austin Eckler went to the Commanders. So it's the same thing. People mainly focus on Saquon because he's missed a lot more time than other running backs, And so when it comes to the signing, you just got to ask yourself these sort of questions, because it is a big signing. I mean, if you had told Eagles fans in 2018, 2019 that Saquon would be on this team, they'd be blown away. They think that we have, and especially if you told us these past 2 years that Saquon would be on this team, you would be blown away because of the fact that you look at the amount of just star power on that offense, with Jalen Hurts at quarterback, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith as your 1-2 punch in the receiving core. You got Dallas Goedert at tight end. You got that O-line, and then you got Saquon Barkley back there. It's like, that's crazy. But of course, the biggest question mark is health. And there's a lot of things that you want to think, it's like, is he going to stay healthy? Was it just the fact that he was playing in MetLife that's the reason why he had so many injuries, is the fact that he had to play on that field for half the year, And then, of course, the other thing, too, is the Giants have the entire time Saquon has been there, the Giants have never had a good O-line, especially run blocking O-line. They have never had a good O-line for Saquon, so that's obviously going to lead to him taking a lot more punishment, you know. Now he has the Eagles O-line that has finished second and first these past 2 years, I believe, in like run blocking and all that. I forget the exact stats. I wish I could have saved it, but yeah, you know, now that he's running behind that line, you know, you expect him to not only stay healthy, but to do even better work than he's done in his career before. Now, he's older. He has a lot of mileage and injuries on him, so it's a sort of weird spot we're in. We don't know what sort of expectations to have with him. You know, it's like, because I see a lot of people saying, you know, is this going to be the year Saquon runs for 2,000 yards? And it's like, I don't know if I personally can get behind that. You know, could he do it if behind this Eagles O-line? Of course he could, but it's that, again, that thing of injuries and, you know, age. It's like, does he have that ability at this point in his career? Again, behind that Eagles O-line, I could see it happening, but, you know, these are the concerns and questions you have to ask with a signing like this. And of course, everyone's going to bring up the big thing of, well, Jason Kelce retired, but like, yes, Jason Kelce was an irreplaceable piece on that O-line, but, you know, it's not like the Eagles aren't the best at, you know, producing these offensive linemen. You know, Jeff Stoutland can work with so many offensive linemen and make them great. I mean, just look at the work he's done with Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson. Now you hope for Cam Jurgens to fill in that spot because Kelce himself selected him to be his heir. You know, now the one thing is, you're looking at that right guard spot. You know, they did sign Matt Hennessy to a 1-year deal, but, you know, a lot of people are still like, I don't know, you know, it doesn't, like, they're not fully behind it. We'll have to see, you know, come playing time, and especially come the start of the season, who's starting at that right guard spot. Is it going to be a guy like Matt Hennessy, or is it going to be oh gosh, I forget who's the other right guard we have on the team. But, you know, asking yourself stuff like that, like, is it who, like, it's obviously probably going to be a battle during, you know, like training camp and preseason. But, you know, that's something that you got to ask yourself in a sense. You know, it's like, who's filling in that right guard spot? But again, you know, behind that offensive line is really good. They're going to be together for quite some time. I think we talked about it in the last Philly Talk video when we were talking about Jason Kelce's retirement. But Lane Johnson, you know, who knows when he might call it quits. I think in this draft, we'll likely see the Eagles, you know, and Lane Johnson kind of pick his heir to, you know, his position. But, you know, this offensive line is young. They're together for quite some time. They just signed Landon Dickerson to an extension, as we saw that news. 4-year contract extension. I think it makes him the highest paid guard in the NFL now. Obviously, Brandon Graham we're bringing back for 1 year. Jake Elliott got a 4-year contract extension. Real good stuff there, you know. But yeah, that offensive line is going to be together for quite some time. And, you know, I don't think there's a better offensive line for Saquon to be behind. And, you know, you just hope he stays healthy. One of the other moves, you know, I want to get some of these not necessarily lesser, but like more of the smaller deals in a sense out. You know, linebacker Zach Bond, they signed him, I believe, from the Saints. It's a 1-year contract. No one's really completely confident. You know, it's not, you know, necessarily about Zach Bond himself, but the play style. He's like another type of like edge rusher, and it's like, dude, we already kind of have enough edge rushing on this team. We want linebackers who can actually, you know, play in coverage and, you know, be a sort of field general out there, because it's like you already have some good pieces on that defensive line. Why is it that, you know, we need more rushers when we clearly struggled all year with our linebacker spots, you know? And it just comes down to, for whatever reason, the Eagles and Howie Roseman just never valuing that, you know? We also signed Devontae Parker. Want to get that out the way. Pretty decent, you know? I still think they might bring back Zacchaeus as a like a gadget piece. Maybe in the draft look for an actual like slot guy, you know, like one guy that you're gonna use in the slot specifically. And then the more recent signing was Devin White. This one really confusing. you know, because it's like you don't really know what to think. A lot of people aren't necessarily the happiest with it. And the thing is, you know, I agree with the people who are like, hey, it's better than what we had last season. But I'm tired of kind of having that mindset as a team. I really want change when it comes to Howie Roseman and his team, because why is it that that's what we settle with when it comes to our linebacker spots? Is, you know, stuff like, oh, well, at least it's better than last year. Linebacking core, at least it's better than this and that. And it's like, we shouldn't just be settling for that. Like, we want actual, you know, good pieces at the linebacker spot. We're not asking for no superstar back there, especially because obviously it comes down to cap and money. You know, it's like, it's not like we're asking for our own sort of like Fred Warner back there, you know, but it's like, hey, can we at least get, you know, someone that can, you know, cover real well? It's like we kind of keep taking these linebackers where it's like you have to be sort of I don't really know what's the word, but like you gotta mess around with things and be sort of like creative in the way you use them. And it's like, why can't we just get a guy that we can put back there and, you know, he's a coverage guy. It's not, you know, another edge rusher. It's not a guy that, you know, can show out if you use them in specific situations. Like, why can't we just get a guy who can be out there, you know, for all the plays, basically doing coverage, you know? And then of course the big thing is Nakobe Dean coming back healthy and staying healthy, because that's been the biggest issue for him. And you look at that linebacking core and you're just, I don't know, you're just not completely convinced. I'm not completely convinced. I'm a bit worried about this linebacking core being a repeat of last year, where teams are just going to target us over that middle because they know that's the weak point. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Continuing on that talk, the big other free agent signings. The first one, Bryce Huff, signed him from the Jets to a 3-year contract. This one's a really good signing. You know, you see a lot of Jets fans upset to losing him, and a lot of people are, you know, wondering how this works out, because again, it's another edge rusher, and you're wondering how is this going to work out. Well, there's a reason they brought him in, and that's because obviously we see the news. We even talked about it in an episode, Hassan Reddick trade. You know, they gave him permission to seek a trade. He doesn't want to trade. He wants an extension. Like I said in that video, he came here for a reason. He considers this his home. The other options are also looking at Josh Sweat trading potentially, you know. But the thing is, I just saw I think it was today or last night or yesterday, I forgot when it was, but basically Josh Sweat recently signed an extension, or like maybe it was like a salary restructure or whatever, but I saw something about extension. I don't know how many years that may be, or like I said, if it was just what's it called, if it was just a contract restructure. But I did see something about it, and yeah, okay, contract restructure, yeah, that's what it was. It will remain through the 2024 season. So that's what we've been hearing, and that's why they signed a guy like Bryce Huff to fill in for one of those guys should they trade one of them and look to extend the other. And I like this signing because, again, it's very reminiscent of the Hassan Reddick one, where, you know, shout out to my guy here on YouTube, C4. He's the guy I go to for a lot of, you know, analysis with the Eagles stuff. Like he was saying, when they signed Reddick, you know, he was coming off of that 10-sack season, and they were hoping for him to repeat a lot of what they saw during his time in Carolina, and he ends up doing that for us. I mean, just look at how good Hassan Reddick's played for us these past, 2-3 years, and they're hoping with a guy like Bryce Huff to replicate that, coming off a double-digit sack season, want him to repeat that in the coming years of this contract, and, you know, hopefully he'll be able to do that. Now, when it comes to Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick and the trade, I don't really want to trade either, you know, but if I were to trade one of the two, it would likely be Josh Sweat, just because, again, like we saw last season, the fact that he went those last 8-9 weeks without getting a sack was very concerning with his play. And ultimately, though, if it came down to me, I would wait it out a bit. I would personally wait till the trade deadline, because I would want to see what guy is playing well, what guy is showing that, you know, he's going to do well, that he's going to be worth keeping here. Obviously, the big issue with Hassan Reddick is money, you know, and the extension that they're going to have to sign him to, especially because I think they still need to sign Devontae to a extension soon. So they're trying to save money for that, because they want to keep this wide receiver core together. They want to keep the offensive core together, as seen by Landon Dickerson's extension. So it's real confusing stuff. It's like you don't know which one to go with, because Josh Sweat may be cheaper than Hassan Reddick, but Hassan Reddick may give you more valuable production. That's why I think wait till the trade deadline, just so you can truly see. Now obviously that may come to bite you back if both guys aren't performing well and then you sell them off for less than what you could have gotten now. But it's just that thing of like, it's tough to decide which of these two you want to trade, and ultimately you don't really want to trade either, but that's not the way salary cap works. And then coming down to our last signing, as of right now, of course, CJ Gardner-Johnson agreed to a 3-year contract with the Eagles. Super happy about this one. Super glad to have him back. They have so many options with what to do with him. Obviously, he ended up leaving, and I was very upset with him leaving. I think we even talked about it in an episode potentially. I actually don't remember if I did a free agency or draft video last season. I'll have to, double check that, but definitely gonna do a draft one now. But yeah, I was super upset when he left. My dad and I were upset when he left. We were like, this is not a guy that should be leaving. He did really well for us, and we all know the whole issues that went down about the whole, they thought they were gonna get more on the market, end up signing a prove it deal with Detroit, and now he's back. Really should have never left. Just super excited for him to be back. Obviously he had that injury. You want to hope he can return to the way he played before, but also he brings that mentality. A lot of people look at him as arrogant and cocky, and has a bit of a trash talk to him. So I mean, we saw how him and Debo were going at it and all that. So a lot of people will look at that, but like you always sort of need a guy like that, sort of like looking in the NBA, you need a Pat Bev to like be able to rally your guys like that, to be able to bring that sort of dog mentality. And it's like we saw this past season how the Eagles desperately missed that, so I'm glad to have him back. Hoping he does really well for us, just super glad to have him back. And there's different options on what to use him. They can play him in the nickel a couple times. They can have him do that safety duo again of him and Reed Blankenship, or they can even maybe sometimes use him in the box like as a linebacker. But that's the thing, apparently they're still in on Justin Simmons. I don't know for sure. I heard also what was the other team I heard? I don't know if it was the Bears. A couple teams are looking out for Justin Simmons. The Eagles want to have a sort of variety, with their defense this next season. Want to be able to use different packages. Could definitely sign some of the different free agent safeties on the market that they could use in that sort of like box linebacker spot. But with CJ, there's a lot of versatility there. There's a lot of different ways they could use him. Obviously, the main reason he left New Orleans was because he didn't want to be a nickel, so they may use him more at safety. But who knows? Maybe there will be times he is used, in a nickel, or maybe used in the box. It'll be interesting to see how things go. But that's the free agent news so far. Pretty good free agency so far. They still got a couple of things to address, but I think whatever isn't, that should be telling of what they're going to do with their draft, especially because you look at their picks. As of right now, they have the 22nd overall pick. They have a 50th overall pick from New Orleans. Then they have 53, and then they have 1 3rd-round pick, which is compensatory. They have 3 5th rounds and 1 6th round. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with this draft upcoming. Likely targeting corner in the 1st round because, Darius Slay's likely gone, which you do have Ringo there to fill in after him. But then it's like you have Bradbury still. You still need a guy, in that nickel spot, in that slot corner spot. So, it's going to be interesting. This draft is going to be very interesting. The way this season, or this end of season stuff plays out is going to be very interesting to see what happens. But that's it for the free agency news. But that's not the end of this video. I know this video has already gone pretty long at 19 minutes, but we still have one thing left to talk about because you see it in the thumbnail. We obviously gave our flowers to Jason Kelce, so now it's time to give our flowers to Fletcher Cox. Fletcher Cox obviously announced that he would be retiring, and it just sucks, man. Another another guy who has been here for so long. You know, I think people really sort of don't realize how, you know, rare that is in the NFL nowadays, you know, that so many of these guys stuck around for so long, you know, like Lane Johnson, Jason Kelce, Brandon Graham, and Fletcher Cox, you know, especially because when it comes to money, it's sort of hard to keep guys on your team for so long. Like, there's very few in the league right now that are still with the same teams. Like, I think Levante David is one of them. There's obviously a couple more, but, you know, it's like, it's very rare that you see this, because it's like, obviously you got to maintain your play to stay with the same team. You got to be under a reasonable cap hit to stay with a team. And that was the biggest thing with these guys like Kelce, like Graham, like Fletcher Cox, like, you know, Lane Johnson. They were willing to take these pay cuts to stay with the team. We saw, I can't remember if it was 2020 or 2021. I forget what year it was, where they released Fletcher Cox and everyone was like, no, you know, there goes his time with the team and all that. It looks like it's all come to an end. Only for it to be that he re-signed it. Oh yeah, it was in 2022 where they released him, and then they brought him back at the end of March on a different deal, you know, because they wanted to work to get a better deal with him that was, you know, more team friendly, especially salary wise. And it's just like, you just love that that he was willing to do that for this team, you know. It just sucks to see him go, just like what's it called? It just sucks to see him go, just like Jason Kelce, you know. It's like, you wish to see him, you know, play one more year just like Kelce, because you don't want it to end on the way it did. You don't want that game at the Link to be their final game, but at the same time, you're glad for them to call it now, you know, rather than, you know, later on when they're not as good, when they're not, you know, at their best abilities. You know, it's like the same thing with Kelce. We just saw Aaron Donald retire as well, and it's that like mentality of, let me go out on top rather than when I'm washed, basically, you know. And, you know, Fletch is a guy that, again, kind of like Kelce, like I said, it took him a while to sort of get that recognition, you know. Obviously, he was a big name. He was regarded as one of the best defensive tackles in the league for a long time, but, you know, it wasn't like you heard a lot about him. You know, he still obviously made his all-pro teams. Like, he got all-pro second team 3 times. He was a 6-time Pro Bowler. He made the all-pro first team in 2018 when he had the most sacks in his career. But, you know, you look at the stats, you look at everything this guy did with this team. It's crazy, man. Pretty much was almost always healthy for the most part. 2017 he only played in 14 games, but pretty much every other game he was there, man. He was, yeah, for, what was that, 4 seasons in a row, from 2013 to 2016, played all 16 games. After that 2017 season where he only played 14, he played every game since then, except for 2020 he missed a game, and this year he missed a game. But every other year, then those years, it was like he was always playing with us. He was always playing a good amount of snaps, but obviously he was always a rotation guy as well, in the sense of, like, you know, the Eagles defensive line was always built on rotating guys in and out to keep them fresh, but he always played a good amount of snaps for us. Like I said, he had 10.5 sacks in 2018, his career high. But again, you look at the numbers, you're like, oh, well, the sacks don't jump off the board. But of course, he's a defensive tackle. We know defensive tackles don't get that many sacks, but he still was really good. A lot of the stuff he did obviously doesn't show up on the stat sheet. On his career, he had 70 sacks total. He had, what was it? I saw it here. 16 forced fumbles, 14 of which were recovered. He had a combined 519 sacks, 351 of those being solo. He had 88 tackles for loss. He had 173 QB hits, and his approximate value, you know, that Pro Football Reference gives to him is 121. And like I said, 6-time Pro Bowler, first All-Pro team in 2018, was just really good for us. You know, you look at all the different things. You know, it's like you look at the amount of pressures he got, you know, 45, 21, 22, 23, 25, 28. You know, it just sucks. You know, you don't want to lose a guy like this, but obviously with age and, you know, just again, kind of like how I said with Kelsey, man, you just want him to live his best life, to be healthy in retirement. And I'm just glad to have had a player like this on my team. Thank you, Fletcher Cox, for everything you contributed to the Eagles for the past, 12 seasons, or 11 seasons, technically. Thank you for everything, man. You were amazing for us. You were obviously one of the longest tenured with Kelsey. Sucks that that's the note you have to go on, but I'm just happy to see you retire. Thank you for everything you did for this team. One of the best, one of the most underrated at times, and hope to see him in the Hall. Unlike Kelsey, he has a bit more of an uphill battle. You know, Pro Football Reference has him right now at a 78.38 on their monitor, 13th amongst defensive tackles. It says the average Hall of Fame defensive tackle has a 102, so he has a bit more of an uphill battle. But I mean, he has the stats to his name. He has an All-Pro. He was a 6-time Pro Bowler. He was on the Hall of Fame All 2010s team. He's a Super Bowl champion, obviously. Played an integral part in this team for so many years. It'll be interesting to see. Hope you can get in, you know. But just thank you for a wonderful career, man. And though I want to finish this episode on that note, my phone just buzzed. You may have been able to hear the vibration. The Eagles have just made a trade. And it's a bit of a confusing one. As I look, the Pittsburgh Steelers have traded QB Kenny Pickett. The Steelers get pick number 99 and 2 2025 7th round picks. The Eagles get Kenny Pickett and number 120 in the draft. Very confusing. Obviously being brought in as a backup role, obviously, because Jalen Hurts and that contract that he has is obviously going to be the starting quarterback. But, you know, obviously going to be a backup. I don't think that's going to be big news to anyone, but I guess it works out. You know, that's kind of a weird note to end this video on, but I guess, man, you know, you always want a good backup, as we saw with Nick Foles backing up Carson Wentz, what that led to. You always want a good backup. I mean, we saw what happened when Jalen Hurts went down in 2022 when they had to rely on Minshew, who wasn't bad, but, you know, obviously didn't, you know, work with the scheme that well. Mariota obviously wasn't that good. We never really wanted to put things in his hands. He went off and signed with the Commanders. Everyone was kind of fine with Tanner McKee. They were like, yeah, we'll be fine, but maybe just get someone else. But at the same time, everyone else was like, we don't really want to sign a free agent backup QB, because I mean, look at some of the money these guys are getting to just be backups. Like, I forgot who it was, but they got like $6 million. So when you can use that money elsewhere, you know, especially because as we saw, they gave Devin White like 8.4 million, I think it was. You obviously wanted to save that money for a guy like him, you know, if you're going to make a free agency signing. But I guess this is the cheaper option. I mean, it was only like 2 future 7th round picks, and where would even pick number 98? That might be 4th or 5th round. I forget where that may be. But I mean, we got to pick 120 in exchange, so it's not like too far back. Definitely an interesting trade. I'm glad to have gotten a sort of live reaction on there. That's just pretty confusing though. It's like, I guess that's an option for backup QB. I don't know, man. That's pretty confusing. I guess we'll see what happens from there. But super happy with a lot of the free agency signings. Very weirded out by this Kenny Pickett trade. I'll look into it more. The next time we'll talk is obviously when the draft happens, and obviously we're about 13 days away from opening day of baseball when the Phillies return. That's going to be fun. And then obviously, of course, when that draft happens, we're going to be here. Obviously, I don't watch a ton of college football, but I still, you know, do my research, you know, to really get an understanding of a lot of the guys that get picked and the teams they go to. So we'll be here covering the Eagles draft, you know, talking about some of the moves they make. Be interested to see if they make any trades. We'll be interested to see if they like what decisions they decided to go, especially with that number 22 pick. And of course, lastly, thank you, Fletcher Cox, for everything you gave to this team.